Hi, thanks for joining me today. My name is Susan, and I'm going to be sharing a little bit about this document I created called Supplemental Instructions for End-of-Life Care with ALS, or MND, if that's what it's called, where you're located. So my name is Susan Pennock. I'm a licensed clinical social worker for ALS Northwest, located in Oregon and Southwest Washington in the United States. I'm very passionate about palliative care as well as death and dying. At the age of 19, in my freshman year of college, I actually took a death and dying course. And my first break back home, I actually sat my entire family down and made them fill out advance directives, which no one had done yet. So I was glad I did that, and I just think it's important for people that are willing and ready to think about end-of-life choices and share those with their loved ones. So currently each day at work, I'm helping people with ALS kind of find that best quality of life and help them live that. That's my main goal. But also for those that are ready, to help them plan for what their passing might look like and help them be able to achieve those wishes as well. Disclosures, none. I'm a small-time care service coordinator in Oregon and Washington, so no one is paying me anything, so we're good there. My objectives today are just kind of to share the importance around having these end-of-life discussions with people living with ALS or MND and why we want to talk about these things as soon as someone's ready. And most importantly, offering a more specific end-of-life discussion and material for someone with ALS so they feel like they have a little more specific information to make those decisions on. And then also just a little bit talking about timelines of when we could do this type of work as well. So hopefully we can get to all of that. So for end-of-life discussions, as you can see on the screen, and hopefully you were able to get a copy of this document as well, those first 3 or so pages really are all about just helping kind of set the scene or to get people thinking about end-of-life decisions. So we leave more kind of open-ended space and questions for people to think about what is quality of life? What does that mean to me? Have I been through an end-of-life process with someone else, and what went well and what didn't, and what would I want to do or not do, as well as looking at what these end-of-life decisions, where they might affect other people. So looking at things like legacy and family and cost of some of the choices people might be making. Like I said, we try to use some really open-ended questions to get people to think. This is not the space to be checking yes or no boxes. It's to give people that time and space to really think about what quality of life looks like for them. Now, of course, this is something that someone could sit and do on their own. Or they could have a discussion with loved ones as well. It just depends on the person and what they're more comfortable with. But you can kind of see as you get a chance to look closer at these pages that it helps someone look more to quality or quantity. And sometimes I've met people that quantity, more time is quality. That's what they want. And once that we know that that's quality of life to them, then that's what we do, right? We push and pursue and advocate for them to get what quality of life looks like to them. So these first pages really are just to help them figure that piece out. So who can people talk to? Obviously, the person with ALS, right, should be talking and thinking to themselves, as well as loved ones. And also religious leaders or people like us or trusted medical professionals or people like me, a care service coordinator. I think occasionally, for some people, it helps to step just a bit outside of that medical realm. Sometimes people feel it's easier to talk to those sorts of people, but for those wanting to do this type of work, I think they really can talk to anyone that feels trusted to them, whoever they would want to get the input on for these sorts of decisions. That's who they should be talking to. So there really is no specific number of people. They can talk to as many people as they want to. But as kind of professionals in this realm, I think it's important for us to know that we are on this list. So it's important for us to be open to talking to the people we're working with about this and letting them know that we're one of those people that they can talk to if they're wanting to. So to get more into kind of the specifics of ALS and these end-of-life decisions, this is where the remainder of the document kind of is. So when we look at advanced directives, it's a little more basic, right? I do or I don't want a feeding tube. That's kind of it. As you can see here, we have those same options, but we talk a little bit more about with ALS, what does that mean when I make that decision? And not only what does that mean right now when I make that decision, but what does that mean later on? What am I giving up or what am I gaining by making those decisions? So as you can see, there really are only the two options around a feeding tube, saying that no, I don't want one, or yes, I do. And we start by just talking a little bit about, hey, why is a feeding tube even something that's coming up with ALS, right? We talk a little bit about why speech and swallow will likely go at some point and why this is what is medically recommended. Then at the same time, so we talk about, okay, someone says they don't want a feeding tube. Great. We just want to share what that would mean. We want to share with you what that might look like so that you understand the choices that you're making and how that's going to affect your life, and maybe your quality of life. And once people have read that, and I know that they understand that, hey, you may likely choke a lot more. You could pass from choking. You may aspirate a lot more, and that can lead to pneumonia. Once I know that I've walked through these kind of concerns with someone and they understand that these are concerns and they are things they're willing to take on because a feeding tube means poor quality to them, then I feel okay because I know that they understand the decision they're making. For some, they may not have realized that not getting a feeding tube means these things. So then we step down to, okay, well, maybe I do want one. But I don't want people to use it when I don't want them to. And I always try to remind people that a feeding tube is just like your mouth. You get to decide what goes in and out of that feeding tube. So we can kind of walk through, okay, you've decided you do want to get a feeding tube, but when do you not want that used? So now we're stepping into that, okay, you've made your decision around a feeding tube, but at end of life, how do you want that used? When do you want people to stop giving you nutrition and hydration? Those sorts of steps. So people can really feel like they have their power back over these sorts of decisions. And again, there's places for them to write what they want. They can initial, sign if they want to, or this can just be a discussion piece that they're having with us or their loved ones. So then the next pages are looking at those respiratory decisions. And there's 3 of those respiratory decisions or options that we look at. Again, we start with, I don't want anything. I don't want any respiratory support at all. Right? And again, we walk through, okay, if that's your decision, I just want you to understand what that means and the pros and the cons of that decision. And if that fits with what you have decided your quality of life is, great. As long as you understand that, I'm going to fully support you in that decision, and we're going to work together to make that work for you. If the person is like, ooh, never mind, that actually maybe doesn't sound like what I think quality of life is, we move down to that non-invasive ventilation, right? And we talk a little bit about what is that? What does that mean? What's non-invasive ventilation? Why, when would I want that used during end of life? So again, we're stepping into that. Okay, now I've decided, yes, I want that, but here's when I don't want it used anymore. So they're getting that option of like, okay, I do want this, but if I'm not communicating with you anymore, if I'm unconscious, if I decide I'm not having good quality of life anymore, I want this mask taken off. I don't want it used anymore. Those sorts of things. Or then we step into that third option of invasive ventilation, right? That is a choice. And we walk through those pros and cons. What does getting a trach and being on a vent mean? What are the pros and cons of that? You're going to get more time, right? That's the pro. You really just will get more time. But what does that mean to be on a trach and vent? There is going to be a higher cost of care, right? There's going to be some cons. So we want to walk through those with people to make sure, again, that they're matching up to those first 3 pages of what does quality mean to me? So once we walk through those, again, even at that invasive ventilation stage, we want to walk through, okay, but what is your line in the sand, right? What is that next piece? When is invasive ventilation not quality of life for you? So again, giving people that power back to help make those choices now or earlier stages, as well as at end of life with those choices. So timeline of this work. Really, I think if people are ready, you can have these discussions at diagnosis. I would be one of those people that would want to have this discussion then. And there are the occasional home visits that I go on that I'm working with the sort of people that are ready at diagnosis, and I'm handing this document out that early. For others, they're not ready, right? So other times where it might come up is at medical appointments or check-ins, or if you do ALS or MND clinics, those would be good times to check in and see if someone's feeling more ready to have these discussions. Or you're noticing some major progressions or major changes in someone, and they're getting a lot closer to having to make most of these decisions. Ooh, now maybe they're ready to talk about these. Or maybe they've done some of this work and some of these decisions are coming into play. Maybe they did get a feeding tube, right? So kind of revisiting those or starting to talk about them again to see if everything's still matching up. And then, of course, ongoing check-ins. If someone's done this work, let's keep checking in to make sure that that quality of life piece is still matching up. That's our goal, is to keep matching quality of life up with them. That's what we want to do, is keep providing that for them. So that is my presentation on supplemental instructions for end-of-life care. I believe there'll be some question answer time, but there's also my contact information. So I'd like to thank you all for joining.
Thank you so much, Susan, and thank you for joining us here today now. I don't know if you were on at any other time during the day or yesterday, but there was a discussion about risk, and some of the things you were saying about, well, as long as you have this information, then you can make the decision, seem to fit right in with that.
Oh, good.
So are there any questions here or online? I don't see any at the moment, but I actually do. All right, there's one in the back there. We'll go with you first, and then keep talking.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Natasha from Denmark. In Denmark, we keep those papers in the journal at the hospital. Where does these papers stay when you've filled them out?
Yeah, if someone has decided to fill one of these out, an initial end date, and sign it, we recommend that they attach it to their advance directive and do have it scanned into their medical records.
All right, and then my question was, you had mentioned the line in the sand, and that actually came up earlier in the discussion because line in the sand is a good way to say it because then you can always just change. It's
right.
The sand. So how often do these get reviewed, and are people told that they can change them?
This particular document is very new. I created it a year or two ago, so it's not something I think that's reviewed often just because it's so new. I think with a standard advance directive, at least in our clinics here, we do attempt to review those when there are kind of major changes or progression in the people with ALS that we're seeing.
So not a time, but more an event.
Yeah.
All right, and there is a question here.
Hi, Susan. This is Susan as well. This information is obviously really important for the wider multidisciplinary team because it will influence our communication and conversations that we as individuals, I work as a physio, that we have with that patient. So I know some of our clients, when they've gone through this process in our country, that we also keep a copy at home. What is relevant to our profession is that information with consent is disseminated to us as well, because if I'm not going to engage much in lots of conversation around ventilation, non-invasive ventilation, if it goes against the wishes that that person has expressed. So, you keep the conversations quite short and brief. I'm not going to go into depth unless they change their mind in some way.
Yes, agreed. That's why if someone has decided to fill this out and share it with their medical team, we do like to put that in their chart. And we, at most of our clinics, I work with a bunch of clinics here. Most of them, in just the notes for each clinic, they have a lot of these decisions marked down. So it's a quick look for the team to know, like, oh, we already discussed this. They've already made their decision on this. So we know that day and in that moment, hey, we don't need to talk about this. They've already made that decision. So that's very helpful.
All right, and there's another question down here in the front.
Hi, Susan. This is Christina from Switzerland. Thank you very much for a very informative talk, very important. When you sit down with the ALS patient, do you sit down with their loved ones as well, or with, or just with them themselves? I've noticed that sometimes when the loved ones are with them, they're hesitant to tell me or explain what their wishes would be, so they don't hurt their loved ones, or the loved ones have completely different ideas of what their quality of life should be.
I completely agree, and I think it differs with each person. I try to meet everyone where they are. Sometimes I'm discussing this just with the person with ALS. More often than not, families have already had these types of discussions, maybe not as in depth or specifically around ALS. So they're open to having these discussions together. I've also had discussions around this document with just family caregivers or spouses because they want the information and want to kind of know what's out there, and then maybe they feel like they can address it with their person later on. So it's trying to meet whoever's in front of me wherever they are. in the hopes that they'll get the information when they're ready.
All right. And I think that's a great ending. And we'll all just thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you.